Greetings, everyone. This is Inner Truth 5. Welcome to Spiritual Science. And now I'm going to begin part 4 of Animals and Religion. And this one is going to be about Hinduism and Vegetarianism. This is by Paul Turner, Priyavrata Das. While most major world religions are traceable to one particular founder, Hinduism has its beginnings in such remote antiquity that it cannot be traced to any one individual. Its roots, however, are firmly planted in the ancient Vedic texts. Having well considered the origin of flesh foods and the cruelty of fettering and slaying corporeal beings, let man entirely abstain from flesh eating. That's from the Manusmriti 549. Interestingly enough, the word Hindu is not actually found anywhere in Vedic scriptures. The term Hindu is vague and even a misnomer. The term was introduced by Muslims from neighboring countries who referred to people living across the river Sindhu, a people who actually held a vast array of religious beliefs. There is no one Hindu religion. The original Vedic system is actually quite different from contemporary Hinduism. Both the old and the new, however, converge harmoniously in regard to vegetarianism. Here are some quotes from the Vedas. You must not use your God-given body for killing God's creatures, whether they are human, animal, or whatever. That's from the Yajurveda 1232. By not killing any living being, one becomes fit for salvation. From the Manusmriti 660. The purchaser of flesh performs himsa, violence, by his wealth. He who eats flesh does so by enjoying its taste. The killer does himsa by actually tying and killing the animal. Thus there are 3 forms of killing: he who brings flesh or sends for it, he who cuts the limbs of an animal, and he who purchases, sells, or cooks flesh and eats it all of these are to be considered meat eaters. From the Mahabharata Anu. Cow protection. According to India's traditional scriptural histories, the original cow, Mother Surabhi, was one of the treasures churned from the cosmic ocean, and the 5 products of the cow, Panchagavya, milk, curd, ghee, urine, and dung, were considered purifying. The cow is respected in her own right as one of the 7 mothers because she offers her milk as does one's natural mother. The cow plays a central role in the Vedic ideal for humanity: simple living and high thinking, a life close to nature and God. Until recently in India's history, most people lived on tracts of land suitable for complete self-sufficiency. The cow, thus, has always played an important role in India's economy. For example, cow dung serves as an inexpensive fertilizer. Stored in underground tanks, it also generates methane gas that is used for heating and cooking. Cow dung is also an effective disinfectant and is used both as a poultice and a cleansing agent. The very name for the cows is Agnaya, which means not to be killed. Vegetarianism and nonviolence. In the Manusmriti, it is stated that one should refrain from eating all kinds of meat, for such eating involves killing and leads to karmic bondage, bandha. Elsewhere in the Vedas, the last of the great Vedic kings, Maharaj Parikshit, is quoted as saying that only the animal killer cannot relish the message of the absolute truth. Therefore, the Vedas inform us to obtain spiritual knowledge, one must begin with being vegetarian. The Lord's mercy. According to the Vedic scriptures, one should offer all foods as a sacrifice to God. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. From Bhagavad Gita 9:27. The Gita also clarifies exactly what should be offered. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. Bhagavad Gita 9:26. The Bhagavad Gita further declares that one who lovingly offers his food to God according to spiritual guidelines is freed from all sinful reactions and consequent rebirth in the material world. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sin because they eat food which is offered first in sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. Bhagavad Gita 3:13. Remnants of such devotional offerings are called prasadam, literally means the Lord's mercy. In India, the largest temples, such as Sri Rangam in South India and Jagannath Mandir, the main temple in Puri, all freely distribute sanctified vegetarian foods, prasadam, daily. Animals and spirituality. Long before Saint Francis was declared the patron saint of the animals, the sages of ancient India had already recognized spirituality in all living species. Vedic texts even describe incarnations of God in various animal forms. Some of the more popular are the boar, the tortoise, the fish, and the horse. There is even a half-man, half-lion incarnation. Vedic literature does not promote polytheism. Rather, the Vedas affirm that it is the same one God who appears in various forms. The Vedic viewpoint even acknowledges the ability of ordinary animals to achieve exalted states of spirituality. This is so because of the viewpoint that spirituality is not limited to the human form, and that ultimately the external body is a temporary housing for the eternal spiritual soul. The Vedas say that the living soul transmigrates from body to body, from species to species, until it finally reaches the human form, equipped with the reason and the ability to inquire into the absolute truth. Exercising that human prerogative, one can end the cycle of repeated birth and death and attain the kingdom of God. Here, then, is a religious tradition that emphasizes not only vegetarianism, but also the spiritual equality of all living beings. Sources: Diet for Transcendence by Stephen Rawson, Paul Turner, Priyavrata Das is the Global Director of Food for Life. And this material, this is published in Pakistan Vegetarian Society. Okay, we're going to continue now. Okay, we're going to begin now with the Jewish philosophy of vegetarianism. From Philip L. Pick. Philip L. Pick, 1910 to 1992, was the founder and president of the Jewish Vegetarian Society. He dedicated over 30 years of his life to the vegetarian cause, taking the small local society started by his daughter, Vivian, turning it into a worldwide organization with branches not only in Britain and Israel, but also in Australia, Canada, and the United States, South Africa, and all other English-speaking parts of the world, as well as many other individual members in other countries. His special gift for public speaking and writing deeply felt articles won converts wherever he went. The Jewish philosophy of vegetarianism is a way of life that reaches back into the mysterious morning time of our earthly abode. Whether the record of man's first existence in the Garden of Eden is based upon elemental truths, whether it is but an ancient legend, or whether it is, as we believe it to be, a profound declaration of man's real relationship with his Maker, and a treatise dealing with the essential nature of his being, Certain it is that it contains the seed of an eternal philosophy which points the way of his moral development and circumscribes his ambitions. It guides his spiritual progress along the circumference of a vast circle until he reaches his starting point and once again reverts to his original position as a caretaker of a garden and the guardian of all that dwell therein. The first command is contained in Genesis 1:29 and 30. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food, and to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life. I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. Okay. On the complexion of each phase of creation, it is written, And God saw that it was good, and on the sixth day God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. In total, it was proclaimed very good, which indicates that the universe was as the Creator willed it, in complete harmony. This harmony bears witness to the unity of God who planned this unity of nature. Until this Noetic period, it was a capital offense to kill an animal even as it was to kill a man. This is confirmed by the statement in Genesis, To man and all creatures wherein is a living soul. Note that the word soul is applicable in the same way to man as to animals. Bearing this in mind, many have wondered at the story of Cain and Abel, and in this context it becomes understandable. Why was the beautiful white lamb which Abel slaughtered acceptable to God as an offering? And if this was so, why did Cain, whose offering was scant in substance and begrudging in spirit, kill Abel? The story has two morals. First, that in giving one should be generous and open-hearted and not count the cost. This Cain did not do, but Abel gave of his best. Secondly, notwithstanding this, the cardinal sin of killing a creature warranted capital punishment by the immutable law of retribution, and Abel paid the penalty. Because of the murder, retribution also overtook Cain and Tubal-Cain. The era of violence and consequent retribution had begun, and has developed even unto the present day. The law, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, has been much criticized by people who have no understanding of its awesome truth. It does not mean the return of injury for injury, but that judgment with mercy shall be applied and shall be commensurate with the crime. Dictators have been known to execute people for political views. This is not eye for an eye. It is the absence of justice. This particular law is immutable and absolute and operates whether we like it or not. The story of Cain and Abel lives on today, where man and beast alike kill without cause and eternal retribution is exacted. We now come to the end of the era of perfection. In Genesis 7, it is written, And it came to pass, when man began to multiply on the face of the earth, and God said, My spirit shall not always strive with man. And he saw that the wickedness was great, and that all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Violence is described as ruthless outrage of the rights of the weak by the strong. Why then was not all life terminated? According to the rabbi, God repented of his action in the same way as a parent will forgive and protect a child who has committed violence or even murder, and he put the rainbow in the sky as a promise never again to destroy the earth. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Genesis 8:21. The new era that followed accepted this fact. In the Noetic laws, as in the consequent Hebrew laws given on Mount Sinai, statutes were not to be enacted which the people would not accept, as this would merely cause contempt for the law generally. Compromise was therefore essential in the hope that by a codified form of living man would eventually return to his original self. At this time, therefore, permission was granted to those who lust after flesh to eat flesh, and it was accompanied by a curse. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, and upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Every moveth thing that liveth shall be food for you, even as the green herb. I have given you all things, but the flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. The celebrated Rabbi Hakohen Cook, the first chief rabbi of Israel, wrote a clear-sighted treatise entitled The Prophecy of Vegetarianism and Peace, and in it he deals with the above paragraph as follows. It is inconceivable that the Creator, who had planned a world of harmony and a perfect way for man to live, should, many thousands of years later, find that this plan was wrong. He refers to the dominion over the creatures as not being the domination of a tyrant tormenting his people and his slaves only to satisfy his private needs and desires. God forbid that such an ugly law of slavery should be sealed eternally in the Word of God, who is good to all and whose tender mercies are all over his works. This reasoning is clear by the paragraphs which follow the permission to eat flesh. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will require it. And at the hand of man, even at the hand of every man's brother, will I require the life of man. So, here is the permissive doctrine and its penalties. It has been proven that these penalties are inescapable and are evident in the present day world. When the Hebrews were eventually established, maybe that means first, and the first Hebrews were eventually established in Israel, the laws of Moses, which contains 613 precepts, was duly initiated. Notwithstanding that a mixed multitude of 200,000 accompanied the 400,000 Hebrews on their long trek from Egypt to the Promised Land, it was the most serious crime after murder to kill an animal outside the gates of the temple, and carried the most severe penalty next to capital punishment. The great philosopher, medico, and Bible commentator of the 12th century, Moses Maimonides, states, "The sacrifices were a concession of barbarism. It must be remembered that child sacrifice was universal, and as the story of the golden calf indicated, the people were surrounded with idol-worshipping idol-worshipping tribes. The sacrifice of animals was to lead the abolition of child sacrifice until it led to its own abolition. Sacrifice is an essential part of the human makeup, as is evidenced today by the way people react in time of war and willingly sacrifice their lives. Primitive people could not understand any other form of worship, and today sacrifice is still required, but is represented by charity and good deeds, which satisfy this instinct. It was customary among all tribes to drink the blood and cut the limbs from living creatures with the false idea that they thereby took in the strength from the animal. This belief still holds good among primitive tribes, and an example is the Hottentots, who drink live elephant's blood. The laws of Moses were designed to protect the animals from these cruelties and to prevent the annihilation of the human species from the disease of flesh foods by not consuming the blood, which is the life thereof. In this, there was also a strong moral issue, and even today, when a creature is slaughtered, some of the blood is buried in the ground, and a prayer is said over it in order to remind the slaughterer that he has taken a life. Although blood can be drained from arteries, it is impossible to remove blood from the capillaries, and this could therefore be construed as a prohibition against the consumption of flesh entirely. In order to avoid this problem, the flesh is burned over a flame or salted for an hour. It might be said that this is begging the question, for although it is no longer liquid blood, it remains in a solidified form. The law contains many other precepts regarding compassion for animals. Some examples are, "Thou shalt not yoke an ox with an ass." This was cruelty to the weaker creature. "Thou shalt not muzzle the ox when he treadeth the corn." This is applied also to human beings. It was considered cruel to prevent a creature eating when it was hungry, whilst producing food for others. It is not even permitted to remove eggs from a nest when the mother bird is in sight, and the prohibition of eating milk and meat together stems from the forbidden practice of killing the young in front of its mother. These and other such laws are explained in the Talmud, a large section of which is devoted to Tsar Bal Chain, the suffering of animals. The 10 Commandments are the basis of the Jewish faith, and in the 4th commandment, domestic animals along with the family are commanded to observe the Sabbath day. The Talmud discourses on this subject, and the question as to how domestic animals may observe the answer is no, they must be allowed freedom to roam the fields and enjoy the sunshine, air, and grass, generally to enjoy the work of the creation in the same way as man, a far cry from the present practice of permanent incarceration in darkened factory farms. Again, the 6th commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," seals the general teachings relating to carnivorous habits. The implication is that one shall not kill unnecessarily, and the oft-used translation, "Thou shalt not commit murder," wrongfully restricts the original meaning of the word. Certainly today, the abundance of non-flesh, health-giving foods unquestionably means that every time a creature is killed for food, a sin against God has been committed. Orthodox Jews make a blessing for practically all benefits in life. There is a separate blessing for each type of food, but there is none for flesh foods. Something that has been slaughtered cannot be blessed. There is a blessing on wearing new garments, but no blessing may be made over furs or other animal skins of any kind. You cannot destroy the works of creation and at the same time bless God for having made them. There are blessings on seeing beautiful trees, famous people, thunder, lightning, etc., and the main underlying it all is to acknowledge the supremacy of God and the dependency of man. The festivals, many of which have been incorporated into Christian observance, are Passover, Easter, Pentecost, Harvest Festival, and Sukkot Tabernacles. The fast days, however, have not been adopted. On Pentecost, when the synagogues are decorated with fruits and flowers, no carcasses of slaughtered creatures are to be seen. On Sukkot, when the little booths are erected, they are decorated with fruits and flowers. No bodies or portion of bodies are used as decorations. Even on Passover, the paschal lamb is purely symbolic. There is no instruction to eat it other than on the first biblical Passover, and any food symbol can be used to carry out the ordinance that all generations shall remember the going out of Egypt, the departure from slavery to freedom. The paschal lamb was in fact a sacrifice and not permitted, therefore, since the destruction of the temple. On the solemn day of atonement, when all Jews fast and seek compassion from the Almighty for life and health in the coming year, no leather shoes should be worn in the synagogue. The reason for this is not humility, but to avoid hypocrisy. It is not devout to pray for compassion when one has shown no compassion in daily life. Likewise, it is a sacrilege to wear a fur coat, which is for self-aggrandizement and the product of extreme cruelty. It should be observed that nowhere in the Bible are flesh foods promised as a reward for observing the commandments, but an abundance of corn and wine and oil, gardens of nuts and figs and pomegranates, bread to make one strong, and oil to make the face shine, and land flowing with milk and honey. Milk was an expression of plenty, and honey was derived from dates. Wine was actually grape juice. And land where each man shall rest in peace under the shade of his own fig tree, not let it be noted under the shade of his own slaughterhouse. Great scribes, teachers, and philosophers stride across the millenniums of Jewish history imbued with these teachings. Many of them were vegetarian. Many followed the practice of sects in ancient Israel and helped keep the flame of compassion from being extinguished. One of these tribes, the Essenes, who abjured all forms of flesh food and intoxicants, still exist in large numbers in modern Israel. The founder of Christianity was of this tribe, and it is rather surprising that discussion takes place in vegetarian circles as to whether he was in fact vegetarian. The answer should be obvious, and parables such as the loaves and fishes, etc., bear other explanations, a realm into which this article does not penetrate. It is interesting to note that a very much larger portion of Jewish people are vegetarian than their neighbors. In many instances, they take leading roles in furthering knowledge of this great subject. In Israel, there have been 3 vegetarian chief rabbis in 25 years, and over 4% of the population are vegetarian, perhaps a higher percentage than in any country in the world, excepting India. The long winding road back can now be clearly seen, may be traversed ever more speedily, and may the day not be far distant when the beautiful prophecy of Isaiah will be fulfilled. For behold, I create new heavens and the new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, and they shall plant the vineyards and eat the fruit of them. The wolf and lamb shall feed together, and the lion shall eat straw like the bullock. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. Okay, very nice. Very nice. It looks like I still have more to talk about with Judaism and vegetarianism. So I'll begin a new section to talk about that. And because this has been such a long ongoing talk, I probably will get to that tomorrow. So that will be the end for today. Thanks for listening, and you all have a beautiful, blessed day.